Hello and welcome to another scrapping video. As promised, the casualties of the 2019 Openers Open, my Dremel that stopped working. Now I already took this apart to check if it was a blown fuse or not. It's probably the main circuit board in here that stopped working. And the blender of which the motor blew probably still has some of the cat litter in there. So I'm gonna have to toss that out later. So let's see what's inside one of these. There's of course a motor in there that has some copper, tiny circuit board, and some wires. So the new Dremel that I got is basically an upgraded model, same type of model but a newer version of this. And this one I had for close to 15 years, so money well spent. So yeah, basically plastic. I don't think there's anything interesting in here other than a rogue screw. Right, plastic. This is plastic. See if I can get this out. Oh, there we go. More plastic. Now there's some brass in there, some copper, and some steel probably. Usually the rotors are very annoying to take apart. If you've seen the blow dryer video, I've been hassling with one of these quite a long time. I'm not going to be bothering with this one too much, but I will try to get the coils out of the stator, the rotor and the stator, the part that stays and the part that rotates. So we'll see what I can get from that. I'll start piling up my cables again, and when I get another big pile, I'll haul them off to the recycling again and maybe get another nice score out of it. Last score was pretty good. It's gonna take me a while to get that big of a pile. Now there's a nice copper plate on here. Let's just cut that off. Or bend it a couple of times. There we go. Right, so yeah, basic power cable. Let's put that aside. More plastic. This I'll toss in with the scrap, and a probably low grade board because there's not much on there. These tactile switches may have like silver in them. Little LCD screens might have, I think it was indium or something that might be in there. I'm not gonna bother because, well, if I can't melt it and turn it into projects, then I don't mind so much. And yeah, that's basically what's in there. So see if I can get this off. Rubber. There we go. Oh, that's one of the brushes, I think. So focus here. These bits are nice copper blocks. These you can usually like grab and break off. There's a whole lot of like epoxy stuff or gluish like stuff in there. Like I said, I'm not going to be bothering with this. I'll just toss this in with copper motors. The bearings, if you can get those off, might be interesting. I'm thinking of trying to cast like some custom fidget spinners because the hype is now completely over, so let's get into it now, and just for fun, and I need a couple of these things for that. So let's see what we can get out of this. Oh, see, this comes apart quite easy. Pretty sure this is brass. Yes, these are stuck in there good. Pretty sure there's like a steel ring in there or something. Or maybe it's part of the brass. Let's see here. Or maybe not. Nope, just plastic. I'll try to get this stuff out off camera and show you the results at the end. And for this, it's your basic copper motor. More plastic. There's not that much in here. There's only like 2 coils. So I'll Dremel through here and just pull them out, and then that goes on the floor, and then move on to the blender. These come off pretty easily actually, so I'm gonna take these off anyway. Tiny bits of copper, more copper good. See, this works pretty well. There, I'll do the rest off camera. Alright, got all the little pieces out, and they are somewhat blackened here and there, but it's good copper. I was fiddling with the power cord plug, and usually I don't bother trying to take the pins out, but I just snipped a bit and pulled it out, and actually the whole thing came out along with a bit of copper. And these pins are usually like nickel plated brass, because if you scratch it a bit, it turns all yellowish. I think you might be able to see that where I gripped it. Maybe like get a small file or whatever. Quite difficult to see on camera, but there's yellowish stuff under there. So cutting it there will get me a little bit of, oh, and again on the floor, will get me a little bit of extra copper and some nice brass. So when melting the brass, the chrome or nickel plating will just burn off and float to the top and be skimmed off with all the dross or dren or slag, crap, whatchamacallit. There we go. So, tiny bundle of copper. That's good. I'll do the other one off camera. Alright, all the way through. Let's see. Yep, that looks all the way through. Now let's see if I can pull it out on the other side. It should work. Oh, plastic is also coming out. There we go. That's one. There's not that much stuff in here, but yeah, it broke. I paid for it, got a new one. Might as well scrap it. Let's get some of this. Oh. Turn this into somewhat of a bundle so it doesn't fall apart completely. There, nice bundle of good copper. Now for the other part. This is what's left of the cut-off wheel I used to adjust the tongs for when I was doing the Golden Coca Cola bottle for the Openers Open, and went through quite some of these. But when they're tiny like this, because this thing was like this big, when they're tiny like this, you can still use them for like little stuff like this. It's a waste to just throw them out and use another big one. And like us recyclers, waste not, want not. Well, kind of. All right. There we go. So I'll take off the plastic of this thing and then throw this in with the iron. And another nice little bundle of copper. Twisty, twisty. All right, let me get everything sorted and then show you the end result. All right, end result of the Dremel. A lot of plastic, and even got everything out of the plug, so that's basically just plastic. Let me get in a bit closer here. So it was quite some a chore to get these brass pieces out of all this crappy white plastic. But yeah, some brass. I'm always eager for brass because I don't get a lot of it. Got some nice copper, little copper pieces here, and this little copper clip. All the cables that came out were basically three small cables and the main power cable. Now my scrapyard doesn't make any difference between low grade and high grade wire. Last time I got €1.40 per kilogram, so that was quite good. Like I said, I'm not going to be bothering with the copper in here. I might try to take one of these bearings off. The other one is in between here, so I'm probably not going to be able to get this off. But like I said, I might use these bearings for other projects if I get them off in one piece and working order. And this will basically go into the copper motors, which I'm not sure how much they will pay me for that because I have not turned those in yet, but I'm getting quite a pile now. Small, probably low grade circuit board, some iron, screws, and this bit, which I will actually keep because that's still the same as the stuff as the part here. Like I said, the Dremel is all standardized stuff, so that's good. Even though it's slightly used and has some wear and tear on it, it's still good, so I'm going to keep that as a spare. So that's it for an old Dremel. Let's move on to the blender. Okay, now for the blender. Let's first get rid of this stuff. Alright. Put that aside, that's not interesting. I've checked a couple of times if I could salvage this by replacing like a fuse or whatever, but something inside has completely burned out or broken. Trying to find the screws in here. I think these might be normal cross screws. And yes, they are. Good. There, screws in the pot. Oh, there goes the other screw. Let's see. There, now I can reach these slightly faster. Yes, on the floor. That's where most of the stuff ends up. So yeah, big piece of plastic. Same deal here. See if I can take that apart later. Standard power cable, slightly thinner than the other one. Alright, now let's see. This is a bigger motor. You'd expect this to be a lot stronger. Apparently not so much. So get all screws out of here. Oh, yes, more stuff on the ground. A small spring. So, iron. What's this lot? I think this is some capacitor or something. Let's see here. Yes, it says farad. So a capacitor. Might be something interesting in there. For refining purposes, also a small resistor there. I used to know how these colors worked because I used to study electronics, but it's been a while, so if I would want to know how much resistance that thing has, then I have to look it up. But yeah, that's basically how those work. Yes, tiny wires. Just throw those in with the trash. It isn't called micro scrapping for no reason. I'll just toss this in with my circuit boards. Now how to get this out? Is that glued in there in some way, or oh, like that, I guess. There we go. These are tiny screws. Thought these would be bigger. Oh well, in the screw pot. There we go. Come here. There we go. More cables. Tiny cables. Might be something interesting in the switch here. I'll look at that later. Cables, cables. Let's get most of these out of the way. And then see how... more screws. Oh, these hold together quite a lot apparently. Yes, and of course this doesn't go off that way. Looks like a brass pin. Oh, it's one of those graphite, what do you call those? They are attached to they make contact with the rotor. So a tiny brass piece, focus on this, and inside is a copper wire, an iron spring. Take that apart in detail later. Should be one on the other side as well. There we go, same deal. Now these things, disc capacitors, these might have silver in them, I have heard. So I'm collecting these, and when I get like a full bucket, I'll see if I can find someone who refines them, or maybe a way to refine them myself. And maybe try to get the silver out and cast some silver stuff. I know Raffle Scrapper does a lot of recovery, and he recently cast some of his recovered silver, so that's something I might try to do. And E-Waste Mike was doing similar stuff with gold. Looked quite interesting. I don't get nearly as much scrap as they do, so for me to start casting something from recovered gold or silver, it's gonna take years probably. So now it's just a matter of getting this. Oh, there we go. Plastic, and that does come off. Let's see, mostly iron, I guess. And there we go. So again, this is the good part. It has only two coils, so get those out later. This is basically the same deal as the other one. This one has slightly bigger blocks on here. I might be able to pull those out as well. And this looks slightly easier to get out, so if I just Dremel around this part, I might be able to get at least a tiny bit of copper out. On the other hand, I might just end up tossing this thing in with the copper motors and getting a few cents off of that, instead of wasting all this time trying to get all this out. These I will try to get out. Let's see if we can get something going here. Maybe this will work in the same way as the other one. Or maybe not. Nope, it's just breaking. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's quite thin. Quite a thin piece of copper. But quite easy to get out. So I'll go around the whole thing and take everything out. And then continue on another part. So got everything off. Basically the same deal. These were slightly more difficult to take apart. So some tiny bits of good copper. The green stuff in there is part of the plastic, and when melting this stuff, that'll burn off. But I have a specific stash of tiny copper bits that I will be melting in my little electric furnace and turning into a small bar. And when doing bigger pieces like a lot of wire, I'll use my clay graphite crucible in my big furnace and make some bigger ingots. So yeah, this I'm going to leave for now. Like I said, I will probably just toss that in with the copper bearing motors and see what I will get for those. Let's see. So this has a nice brass plated, a brass little plate. It does have some tin on there, which I might be able to get out. Now again, one of these disc capacitors, and there we go, tiny piece of brass. Oh, and there is I think a capacitor in here. Might be, yeah, it's probably a capacitor. Might be a diode, I'm not sure. So no idea what that thing is. And here is another tiny brass bit. Now the cable inside is copper, and when melting that doesn't really matter much because brass is made of copper and zinc. All right. Same deal here, tiny piece of brass. Oh, this has more. This thing has some text on it. 3 amps, 250 volts, 150 degrees Celsius, which is quite a bit. Maybe this is the part that broke. Probably got slightly over 150 Celsius. Never know. More brass. Let's see if this coil is actually copper. I'm gonna get a bigger wheel because this has now, well, worn down way too far. New wheel. Let's get going. And yes, this is aluminium. If it's not like iron. No, it's not magnetic. So yeah, sometimes you get these, and then you get aluminium wire that is copper plated. I still don't know why they do this. I think to reduce costs, but then why plated copper? Just to make it look like a copper motor. Basically fool whoever buys these things. Yeah, I thought it was the plastic rubbing off, but apparently not. So yeah, cheap ass blender, cheap ass coils. I'm gonna try to get these out anyway, but I'll leave it at this because this bums me out a bit. So yeah, what did we get from this cheapy blender? Tiny bits of brass, tiny bits of copper, bundle of aluminium, tiny bit of wire. Not even gonna bother with this one, just gonna sell this as a copper bearing motor and not scratch at this because that might also be aluminium. Got some iron bits and a lot of plastic. Oh yeah, and this, I'm not even going to bother with this anymore because, well, I'm kind of done with this thing for now. So yeah, that were the casualties of the 2019 Openers Open. Like I promised, I would scrap these out. Hope you enjoyed, and see you on the next one.